Thank you. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the GBI RFP to our RFP selection committee to order pursuant to ordinances 64102 and 64103. I will call the roll. Ms. Garmendia.
Here.
Mr. Sykes.
Here.
Ms. Kyung.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
And Mr. Lane, I am here. All right, so we have a quorum. Everyone's present. Next order of business to discuss the implementation RFPs and their proposals and their scoring. So James, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I'll just start with a level set and maybe a change in the, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
I think I'm starting to get some static. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so a quick level set. We do not currently have all score sheets available. So if we could limit discussion to just the contents of the RFPs and really voice any concerns or points of inquiry for the RFPs, I think that would be yeah, a good starting point for discussion. And with that, I'll open it to folks to begin talking about the implementation RFP. Maybe we can start with Up Together first.
Sure. My major thoughts on this proposal was that it seemed well, the biggest issue, there's a big issue with the just there seemed to be some confusion on the budget.
Yeah.
And and I also I'd like for us to discuss whether having a local presence was a requirement versus just a nice to have.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think it's more of a nice to have. That's why it wasn't you know, a major percentage of the overall score sheet, and something to consider. And then with regards to the budget, yeah, it seemed like they were confused, and the amendments that we made for the other RFP maybe could have shored up some of the confusion for the implementation RFP.
And then the other part that I thought was interesting was around benefit counseling services, where they were not offering benefit counseling services, but we're talking about more how they were facilitating in other places an exemption. So for people participating in the pilot from having, you know, that it wouldn't kick them out of other benefit programs. So I thought that was interesting, and we should look into that regardless of any other outcome. And I appreciated them describing it in their proposal. But that seemed like the most, like, the benefit counseling piece seemed to be the most questionable part of all the proposals we received, where they weren't quite sure if they would be able to offer that, or we're saying they would not offer that, and they would offer this kind of other thing instead.
My comment on benefits and exemptions is, depending on the benefit, whether it's federal or state, there are a lot that the state needs to be a partner on to sign off on. And so I don't believe we've approached the state for any exemptions and waivers, because we've been waiting till the program was closer to getting started to understand if there are any federal regulations that could guide the state's decisions on things. But that is always something we need to keep in mind as well, because I think the example they gave was in New York. I agree with what Christina's shared so far. The other concern I had with Up Together was, to me, it wasn't really clear on their timeline of how they were going to get the work done, as well as their team size. So that was concerning to me, and how it sounded like it would fall heavily between two people. And that, to me wasn't very clear on their team structure of what it would look like to, of who else is really involved in this process, or if it really is just two people that lead it.
Mm.
And that's with which one again?
Up
Greg?
together.
Up together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree about the timeline breakdown. It wasn't very clear at all. That's concerning. So I'm documenting some of these concerns, and I think while we're considering some of the things that were maybe red flags while scoring and reviewing the proposals, because we do not have score sheets yet, that might be a barrier to making a recommendation. And so I kind of see two paths forward. We could submit questions to those that have submitted proposals, or request that they have an interview, or both. Submit questions and then ask them to respond and have an interview either later this week or early next week. I'm curious, what does the selection committee think about those options while we're considering some of the issues with these proposals?
So I'll go first. I guess my thought is if we have some places that aren't clear where we would like some clarity and feel like that isn't encompassed in the score sheet, I think it would be great to be able to send those questions out to those who are submitting the proposals, and then be able to get those questions in and evaluate those questions or those responses that we get, and see, would this constitute, like, is this enough of a response for us to be able to make an informed decision, or do we feel like we need to have a follow-up discussion interview with them? So that's how I feel. If I know we do have questions and things that there are seemingly concerns from what we have so far, but if we do feel like the score sheet allows us to make that decision, then I guess we don't need to. But I would be more in favor of the former than the latter. So being able to have those questions asked, see what those responses are, and if we need to do follow-up interviews with the proposal entities, then doing that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. If they answer in ways that doesn't feel like it aligns with the RFP, then there's no reason to interview them. So then with that in mind, I'll capture concerns and rephrase as questions as we continue to talk about each of the RFPs.
Those are just my thoughts. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
So the questions you're going to be asking the respondents differ based on their proposals then?
I would say so.
That's fine with me. I would check with legal counsel to make sure that's also fine with them, because it's not us as a selection committee approving you all to negotiate any scopes or anything, if it's just clarifications. But I always like to check with them, because sometimes folks may question if it was an unfair question to them if the other applicant didn't receive it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're adding questions for both parties, I saw some discussion on the budget. I didn't see anything that would inform my points for the other components of the cost item, the donation acceptance, I think it's pro bono services. So if other people had thoughts on those, or saw something I missed, then I'd love to discuss that, because it seemed like a lot of points and not a lot of content.
Did you say not a lot of content or context?
Content. From the applicants.
Hmm.
And then on this proposal, I would also clarify donation acceptance. I just assumed because they're a nonprofit, but that wasn't, I did not read that anywhere clearly in the application if someone else did.
Does that capture what you had in mind, Christina? Just a point of clarity on if explicitly asking if they have the ability to accept donations, and then additionally, if they have any extra services that'll be offered pro bono.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should ask them explicitly.
Is there anything for Deeper Life Church in the forward proposal that or are we closing discussion on up together and ready to discuss the other proposal?
I'm ready to discuss the other proposal. I don't know if we have to close
Yeah,
discussion. We're not doing a vote.
no.
As far as the other submission, other proposal, I was confused on what Deeper Life Church would be doing. And I saw they put themselves as like the oversight partner, and that's just not something I think of a church doing. So it wasn't like intuitive to me, like what their role was and what that meant and how would it be marketed, like to have a church involved. And if correct me if I'm wrong, were they based in the county?
Yeah, I believe it was Shrewsbury is where they're located.
Yeah, and they make mention of a city presence, but nowhere in the proposal did I see a location identified of where they are in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason for what you're saying in terms of their role, it seems like they're mostly just the 501c3 option. And seeing as I guess we did in the proposal or in the RFP make it that the lead applicant needs to be able to accept donations. I think that's the way that this one is structured. So they're essentially the
Okay.
donation receiving arm.
Okay. I guess I'm our church nonprofits the same. I wasn't sure if they're governed differently than non-religious nonprofits. So question for, I guess that would be a question to
Yeah.
ask, or not, maybe we don't have necessarily to ask them, but it's just like a question for maybe a legal too.
Yeah.
And basically what they said around benefit counseling services, that they would be discussed in like negotiations, I guess.
Mm.
So that piece was missing for me.
To that point, I think that it wasn't included explicitly in the budget. It was just mentioned as a point of, and maybe that there's a request for just more clarity around benefits counseling services in general.
Talking about the budget as well, it wasn't clear to me how the budget was, how much of it is allocated to Forward versus Deeper Life Church. I think that's important clarity to understand. And I would like to know a little bit more about the Deeper Life Church's experience with accepting federal grants because of all the monitoring and compliance that comes with them.
Does the city already have contracts with Forward? Grace, do you remember?
Yeah, we have a contract with Ford for the rental assistance portal. I don't know if the contract's still active because we've spent all the funding in that program, but it may still be open for just getting the last of the materials for reporting and auditing purposes.
Okay, so I would say like the familiarity with Forward is at least, you know, a lot of the a good number of city residents will have used their portal for applying for rental assistance in the past few years. So that is and I believe we've been happy with their services. So that's a, you know, a good point. And it's just it was a little confusing on like what was not explained in their submission is like, why did Forward partner with Deeper Life Church versus any other nonprofit or entity? So just I would have I think that's how was your partnership formed, or would be a helpful background question. Like for us to understand if it's, you know, oh, they're trying to make sure that they're capable of accepting donations. That's the role. That would be helpful context. Kelly, any thoughts?
Well, kind of addressing everything that I've noticed, but
A question for the group. If we had a better idea or had a short list of nonprofits that we'd want to partner with to accept donations to expand the scope of the GBI pilot, could we pursue that separately? Or would we have to reissue this RFP? Or could we just have someone at the treasurer's office kind of coordinate that piece separately?
Might be a good city councilor question.
Well, would there be appetite on your end if you could do it?
To expand? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll say short answer, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like the benefit counseling services seemed like the part that both applicants were like less willing to do, and they or would want to charge more to do it. So I don't know if we can again like piggyback off of a city department that already helps? Is there any city department that already does benefit counseling that we can just have them in kind?
Not to the level that I think GBI would need for benefit counseling. DHS, St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, they have some staff that are familiar with benefits. But I think a good reminder is that the treasurer's office is going to be hiring someone full-time. So that might help us as well.
Okay. All right, that's all the discussion I have on this, on these two.
Should we motion to close discussion and move on to the next agenda item?
Well, so is our next step with this one, ask some questions to the city councilor's office, and then potentially reach out to both applicants with follow-up questions?
Yeah, and for the questions that were directed at specific proposals, we'll gain some clarity on if we can ask them different questions or if we need questions that can be sent to both parties and address them more broadly. Yeah. And I'll document that and send that in a follow-up.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close discussion on the implementation RFP.
So moved.
Okay, so it's been moved by Ms. Garmendia, seconded by Ms. Kyung. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll move on to the data and eval.
I'll open discussion in the same way for data and evaluation. Because we don't have all score sheets available, we won't be able to move forward with a recommendation on a selected awardee for this RFP. So yeah, if we could talk at a high level about both proposals and then discuss a recommendation to move forward with, that would be good.
Which one do you want us to start with?
Let's start with Omni. Any thoughts on the scope of work?
I guess I can start. I thought this proposal overall was good. Some things about this they had one really obviously a good example of working with the cash assistance program, and they gave us the attachments of how they did the research paper and how they created those leaflets. I thought was helpful. And I'm not trying to compare it to the other proposal, but so just highlighting, I thought that was nice that they are coming in at least with one solid example of what they've done. Overall, though, I wasn't clear on their understanding of St. Louis as much, and thinking about how this part of this research and part of responding to the RFP is doing a qualitative analysis. So that to me was important, like how well do you understand St. Louis and them not having staff presence. They do mention a staff person in Missouri, but I don't remember reading in the proposal where that staff member is actually physically located. So it to me and how I read the proposal was very virtual based for the most part in their type of engagement and how they would be interacting with the participants. So those were some takeaways for me.
I'll add that piece was, well, yeah, part of that was a little confusing for me too, because I saw that there was a travel budget, but it looked like it was just for one time, so I wasn't sure what that one time would be.
I think it's one them
okay.
stating their final findings.
Okay.
Sorry, Christina, did I cut you off?
Yeah, no, I was saying the same thing. It's phase 4 reporting. When they would travel.
I'll add that I agree with that point, Grace. If, you know, we can do a lot of qualitative work asynchronously, but if you're interviewing folks, restricting those interviews to a virtual setting could be difficult. Especially if one of the requirements is that we're working with families that have school-age children. I just don't know if virtual will always be the best option, especially considering some of the disparities we have with families that don't have access to technology at home. And GBI is meant for folks that are at 170% or below the federal poverty level. So yeah, all of those intersecting things make me think that having someone on the ground able to interview people in person for data and evaluation needs could be beneficial.
Yeah, they do talk about focus groups, but you definitely, you know, besides having an incentive for each participant, there's not other plans for getting them there or having an in-person focus group.
So are we saying that's a question we're going to ask them, whether or not, you know, are they going to be more virtual experience, or will they have people on the ground?
Yeah,
I think it's,
that would be a fair question.
I mean, it would be a fair question. I think it's said, I think we can safely assume that's what they're planning on doing based off of what they've written. We could make sure we could be clear. We could ask them directly, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they have any plans for that Missouri-based person to then spend a majority of their time in certain places along the 18 months, specifically in St. Louis. But yeah.
Yeah. Anything else for Omni?
Not for me. I thought everything else was pretty straightforward.
Okay. Let's move on to the WashU proposal.
I like this proposal. I think they're bringing in a lot of different experience with cash assistance program, and we know, and they also wrote a short 2-page paper, but really understanding St. Louis in here, which I appreciated, that they were letting us know their thought process. Their timeline was really clear. And I appreciated the team structure that was also really clear in the budget and how much time we're going to have from different team members. And so that gave me faith that how they're going to do their quantitative and qualitative analysis.
Yeah, I don't have any worries about their capacity to do the work. And I think they have the really strong partners too that are partnering with them on the other guaranteed income pilots that they're evaluating around the country. So this group gave me confidence with their application. Obviously, they're proximate to the city as well. And they also talked about a little bit of pro bono, like things that they would add to this contract. And they have existing relationships to SLP. I did really like the talking about the administrative educational data component, and not just focusing on the family, but also on like this youth and how this might they would study whether it would impact their performance in school. I think that's a really strong addition.
Yeah, I agree. Especially since I just think that it shows a lot of focus on the eligibility requirements, being families that have school-age children, and that additional focus is important. Yeah. Are there any questions that we would want to ask WashU about their proposal?
One question I have around this in general is, where the payments to the families themselves during the pilot, they at the same time both the evaluation proposals also plan to compensate participants. And I didn't know, I guess this is a general question, is whether we would want them to, do we care whether they use separate compensation systems? Do we want them to be aligned at all?
Point of, are you referring to how families receive the $500 payment?
Yeah, so we have I know we have the financial services RFP out for that component. But, yeah, like both of these proposals, we asked for them to compensate participants in the surveys and focus groups and whatever evaluation they have, and it's just a question of like, we're not requiring them to use the same system. Like it could be a participant has a debit card that gets that regular $500 addition, and then they get a separate gift card from WashU or from Omni for completing the survey.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would imagine that they would be, I assume that they'd be separate, mostly because they would be compensating the control group, probably the treatment group as well. But because the control group wouldn't be receiving a debit card because they wouldn't be getting the $500 cash distribution, I imagine all incentives would be separate, be distributed separate.
Yeah, I was also going to add, in their proposal, my impression was that they were gift cards, not cash necessarily. So it's gift cards to like grocery stores, Amazon, whatever they end up deciding.
Oh, okay.
Is it okay to start talking about next steps with these data and eval ones? So it sounds like then we have one question for Omni. And then James and Treasure, are you guys trying to convene us after you get everyone's scores later this week so that we can select the potential awardees?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think for data and evaluation, once we have the scores, we're ready because I think we should talk about a timeline for questions. So if we, once I've synthesized the questions we proposed for the implementation partner, what feels like an appropriate response time for both proposals up together and the other one with forward to then be able to adequately score them and make a decision.
I think a minimum a week. But I don't think it has to be much longer than that.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we'd have a week then for questions, scoring, and then we'd be able to make a decision about both RFPs during our next community. Does that sound good?
Can we select the time that we'll be meeting next week before we hop off the call,
Yeah,
if that's possible?
yeah, let's. A week from now, Monday.
Is a city holiday.
Yep, it is. The 20th.
I'm available before 11 and
Okay.
noon, but before 11 would be better.
Okay. So does before 11 work for other folks on the 20th?
#20th, anything in the afternoon is good for me. Morning doesn't work.
Okay.
I'm free at 2.
You're
And
free at 2.
2 and 2:30. Shorter time, or 3:30 to 4. Got 30-minute increments, basically.
Maybe we should suggest an alternative date, the 21st.
I
Yeah.
do not do the 21st at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Could you have done Treasure Tuesday 3:30 to 4? Because I don't know if we'll need more than 30 minutes if it's just the scoring that you need to present.
Yeah, we'll have those questions to review asynchronously in advance.
I mean, if you can send those the day, the morning, or then when you receive them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, Treasure Lane. 3:30 on the 20th. Does that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. Kelly?
Works for me.
Perfect.
Mhm.
So I'll 3:30 to 4 then on Tuesday, the 20th. And once I've typed up all questions, I'll send to the selection committee for us to approve those before sending those out to each of the proposals. So look for that email later today.
Okay,
All right,
motion to adjourn.
second,
Roll call.
Moved and properly seconded. All in favor?
Um,
Any opposed? Nope. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.